how do you move people from that pre-contemplation phase to that contemplation phase in like the motivational hierarchy?
So there's two ways that you can think about it. The first being, is there underlying factors that's keeping them from wanting to put in that effort? So like, to use a personal example, I've fallen off the lifting bandwagon a few times in my life, and almost all of them were related to a large degree of stress and or fatigue. So like I wasn't sleeping well, like really stressed out in school, things like that. And there's just a certain amount of fatigue that you carry with you that will prevent you from doing almost anything. It's just it's an evolutionary mechanism to keep you alive. Your body doesn't want you to expend a lot of exercise or a lot of energy if you're sleeping 4 hours a day and like you don't have the actual capacity to do the thing. So I like to take a step back and see if there's things going wrong elsewhere that is preventing them from giving the effort to that thing. Like a great example is I took on a client and they were having nutritional issues. They were falling off the wagon a couple times a week, and then they were also missing training sessions. So we met a couple weeks in, and I was like, "Hey, how much are you sleeping?" And it was they were sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night. So we spent over the next 2 weeks correcting sleep, and then the 2 weeks after that, literally the whole goal for those next 2 weeks was come up with 2 meals that you could meal prep. And then all of a sudden they got to sleeping 7 hours, and then because you can make 2 meals, right? You can talk most people into that. And then after that, he prepped the meals, and then all of a sudden he's hit his nutrition for like 2 weeks in a row. So like working back to like the foundational needs level sometimes will solve your problem without even more thought. Then the next step would be, and this is actually something out of clinical psychology, what's the least amount that you can do that you will do, and starting there, and then building on that once they start to see any type of benefit. So like if you get that person to, I don't know, let's say they really like dodgeball. If you get them to start playing dodgeball, you might talk to them 2 weeks later and they're like, yeah, I walk to school on certain days and I'm not winded at the top of this hill anymore. That's really cool. Well, now you got them. So foundational level first is a good place to start, and then what's the least amount that you can do that you will do. I actually used that when we had our first kid to get myself back in the gym. I was like, what's the least amount that I can do that I will do? And I'm not kidding. For the first 2 weeks after kiddo number 1 was born, I did 3 sets total a week. So like in the first week, I think it was, I did 3 sets of push-ups on a day where I had like a little bit more energy than another. And that was like the goal, checked it off, got a green mark across the whole week.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to literally start that back.
Yeah. One of the things that I've also noticed from when I'm talking to my friends is like I've pointed out the sleep thing before. I'll be like, hey, how much sleep did you get last night? And like turns out 1 to 2, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Go take a nap, right?
Yeah, I literally was like, go to bed. And I was like, I'm working. I'm like, well, take the day off and go sleep.
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not operating heavy machinery.
No, they're just on the computer all day. So they're like lunchtime is usually they'll go take a 2-hour nap, and I'm like, that's maybe not the point to do sleep, but who am I to judge?
Get it in somehow at that point.
Yeah, so like finding things like that about them, I'm like, oh, you're like just straight up not paying attention to your body. That's great.
Yeah, you can't build, I don't know how else to say this, you can't build an awesome house on a foundation of crap. So like there's a lot of things that you need to get right for that person in particular before you can even talk about gym consistency.
Yeah, like can we work on food? Like what are you eating during the week? Are you able to like get just 1 block of sleep? Like give me just 6 hours. Give me the bare minimum you need to function, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. What's cool about that is the farther you are away from optimal fitness programming, the less you have to change to get meaningful gains. So like if someone's doing nothing and also sleeping 4 hours, sleeping 8 hours, like they might lose weight just simply because they have a little bit more energy throughout the day. They're more likely to walk the dog. Actually, evidence shows that when you're sleep deprived, willpower is pretty much, or it goes down pretty significantly. So like they're not snacking as much. There's not going on that third Taco Bell run. Like, so literally, you could change someone's life just from changing that, and then hopefully they're hooked.
It's so weird how like small things like that can just absolutely transform somebody. It's just like, oh, all I had to do was this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure.
Something you also talked about was actually another question I had on my list, was falling off the bandwagon. A lot of people that I've known, my parents included, they'll be working out for a really, really long time, and then just like something happens, they fall off the bandwagon. And next thing they're doing, they're just like back to square one. And then when you talk to them like, hey, maybe get back into it, they're like, oh, but I fell off once, like why get back on? Like being able to change that motivation, where is the best way to approach that?
I guess it depends how well you know the person, how not motivated, how educated they are. So like, if they know, or if you could impart on them that doing something will maintain their progress, even if it's like an eighth of the effort. So like if they fall off the bandwagon, you see that on day one, and by day three, you're like, hey, literally just go walk and do one set and you'll maintain. Like that's a pretty good selling point for a lot of people. So educating them on how little effort, because it's a comically little amount, how much you need to maintain. So educating them on that, I found that's helpful. And then examining what made them fall off the bandwagon to begin with, in the sense of, is it things you can avoid, but then B, is the stuff you're doing not sustainable? So, and then C, I guess, maybe creating a parachute, pull the ripcord in case of emergency backup programming. So like, actually, really good example. I have a client, and I'm kind of doing this with them. So I have option A, which is, I'll make up numbers so to keep it more anonymity. Let's say it's 10,000 steps, 2,000 calories, working out 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And I said, if you don't get sleep, like if things go wrong and you're trying and you don't get sleep for whatever reason, just keep the steps and don't go out to eat. Like you can go over on your calories, but just don't go out to eat. So it's like damage control, because they're probably only going to eat up to maintenance, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, if sleep's messed up, you can stay completely on your program just by taking a walk and not pulling into the Wendy's. Like that's your pull in case of emergency. Like I don't even care if you train that week. Take a walk and don't pull into the Wendy's. And then at the end of that week, when things start to get like back online, they may have gotten a little bit better, but they for sure got no worse. Because it's a really unfortunate habit when things start to go off the bandwagon. It becomes like self-destructive. So it's not, I went 300 calories over what I was trying to eat, therefore 3 Domino's pizzas. We've all done that. I've done that, for sure. So having kind of like stop gaps that can be like optimal, still a little bit of progress, maintenance, even only like slightly bad. Like sometimes letting your foot off the gas to only even slightly bad is the mental reset someone needs. So having those in place, I find, is really helpful. But then also, if it happens a lot, you may need to ask, what is it about this or the place that they built that on, the foundation that they built that on, that's not sustainable for them? I think that, did that answer your question?
Yeah, just something that from my personal experience, I know a lot of the things that I've run across, just because I'm a person that moves a lot. Usually like into the rent cycle comes up and I'm like, okay, well, are we staying here? Are we moving? Usually we're going to try to go
like move buildings.
Yeah, like fully moving buildings. So like moving locations. So like the gym that I'm going to is now no longer the same gym I can go to. Maybe I don't have access to a gym anymore. This happened to me a couple times where I was going to like Planet Fitness that was 10 minutes from my house. It was like perfect. Literally on the way home, I can just drive in, do my workout, go home, do whatever. Then we moved, and the next thing I knew, I had a apartment complex gym, which was a lot smaller, less equipment. So I'm like, okay, well, I gotta change this up. Turns out that thing is closed half the time. So I'm missing days that I would go to the gym, and I'm like, well, I can't go to the gym now because that building is literally closed. And then I moved again, and then suddenly there was no gym I could go to, and so I'm like, well, what do I do now? So it's like things like that came up to me, which is partially when last semester when I was doing my calisthenics project, that's where a lot of that came from. Of I want people to have options to do something after the gym is no longer an option.
Yeah.
So being able to just do like you'd mentioned, just three sets of push-ups a day. Suddenly you're able to stay on that maintenance level for a lot longer than if you had just stopped going to the gym. So like falling off that bandwagon in that sense is partially why I like the at-home workout stuff.
Yeah.
Like these are options you can do with a chair, with a hanging curtain. That was a fun time of my life where I was doing the TRX pulls with a curtain on the door frame.
It's gangster.
It was definitely like bootleg. This is minimal of that I can get for the equipment I have. So it's just an interesting, different dynamic thinking about, oh, well, I obviously can't improve because now I don't have heavier equipment to go to. Now I'm just stuck with the at-home stuff, and I can only go to a certain point.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives that interesting dynamic of, well, how do I get back on the bandwagon if the bandwagon's not moving?
In the context of health, the bandwagon's really easy because steps is a lot of your battle, like just getting a decent step count. If there's any athletic or muscle component to that, and muscle is a good component of health, but maybe the step above that would be push-ups, lunges, hinging of some kind. Like there's something in your house somewhere that's above 10 pounds that you could hinge with. Candlesticks, which is like you hold on maybe even a couch and it's like a leg lift. All those taken to failure, and then repeat those on any day where you're not sore, because the stimulus is kind of low. You probably won't get beat up too badly, so you might be doing them back to back, but like most people will progress a good amount on that. So no equipment needed.
Yeah.
It just sucks. Like going all this stuff to failure, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, that actually takes into one of my other questions I had. It was the idea of self-coaching versus having a coach. One of the things that because I'm basically a solo lifter. I don't have anybody that's really, really close in my life that I can be like, hey, come be my gym buddy. So like when I go to the gym and I go do things, I typically try to avoid the things that are to failure because, well, I don't have anybody to spot me. This is definitely for the introverts that are out there. But what would you say the best way to do like that self-monitoring situation when you're trying to want to go to failure, but you just don't have somebody that you're comfortable being like, hey, can you save my life if I'm going to die?
Yeah. So a few really good options. Anything you're pulling, you can almost always take to failure because it's just like a bent row. You just, set it down, lat pull down, things like that. So failure on those shouldn't be a problem. And then from there, you can schedule your workout to be, your free weight stuff can be like 3 to 1 reps from failure, and then finish your workout with machine stuff that you can take to failure. So that's a really solid option because machines are kind of like the perfect environment, right? Like leg press, there's a catch on it. You could even go with like one of the machine leg presses it's even safer, chest press, things like that. So machines later in your workout, you can take those to failure. Free weights, it's anywhere between 3 and 1 RIR, and you never have to talk to a human again. You can just be you and your podcast.
We love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most of the times when I'm trying to, especially because of the things that I've seen with our classes and the stuff you post, is there's a lot of like go too close, like as close to failure you can. And just something in my workouts is just something I'm like, well, I don't want to go to failure because I don't want to accidentally drop the barbell on myself when suddenly I'm suffocating dead. Which usually there's at least somebody in the gym who's going to be like, oh no, that person is in trouble, I'm going to do something. But
there's also like, there's a lot of exercises that you can do safely even with barbells and dumbbells. So like barbell overhead press, like if something's going wrong with barbell overhead press and you fail and you don't feel like you can rack it down, like if you're using bumpers, just drop it. You'll aggravate some people, but you didn't hurt yourself. Who cares? Any pulling, we already talked about. Squats is a little bit rougher, but goblet squats, the dumbbell, leg press, those can all be close to failure. Bench press, you can do this with dumbbells. Dumbbells are ditchable, right? You'll annoy some people, they'll get over it. And then if you annoy someone badly enough, then it just turns into like a little bit of a jiu-jitsu match, so you can practice self-defense.
So you heard it here first. Safety over etiquette.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't give two flying craps what you think of me if my shoulder's healthy. Like, don't care. But yeah, and then so I think that pretty much covers most of the muscle groups. And if you can't do it with a free weight safely, machine, especially to finish your workout.
Cool. Let me see what else I had. Oh yes, this is a great one. How to correct form without a coach. So like you're trying a new movement, you've never done something before. Maybe you saw someone online do it, and you're like, oh, that's a really cool exercise. I want to try it. What's the best way to try to figure out form for that?
Yeah. So really light load. Like when you're working on form, it should feel like a warm up always. Like your 20 RM that you're doing 8 reps with, as an example. But then film it. Like you're not going to be able to make meaningful improvements if it's complex and above your pay grade without filming it, and then review it. So like if you let's assume that the source that you watch the video on has good form, like on our channel. Watch that and then compare yours to it and see what's wrong. And then if you're not able to make those change further, or make the change to make it look like that, look for other videos or how-to videos, kind of keep experimenting with that. And then definitely don't add load or reps until it's starting to look good. But there's a pretty big spectrum of acceptable things to do with exercises. So I would say if it isn't exactly what was pictured in the video, your anthropometry might be different. So if it feels good and looks good, then you could slowly start to add up intensity in some capacity. So adding reps to your sets, and then eventually adding load, going closer to failure, never pushing through pinching or stabbing pain. But like a really good example of this is I'm pretty sure it's structural at this point, so like my bones, but I have never been able to RDL with amazing depth compared to some of the things you'll see. I get a ton of pump disruption and soreness through my hamstring, but like my depth is a lot more shallow than what other people you might see elsewhere. But one thing I did is I actually allow myself to go to the floor. I feel like 1% less tension in the hamstring, but my pump disruption and soreness went through the roof, and it was a lot better. So if my low back was a little bit extended at the RDL, I would go down to the bottom, and let's say this is where I would have to stop. I'll actually go down until the bar touches. So I'll go from extended to a neutral spine. And that's technically violating a few principles of an RDL, but my stimulus markers, so pump disruption and soreness, got higher, and I'm able to use less load because I'm getting a little bit bigger range of motion, and I'm getting less fatigue costs. So like sometimes I'll get like annoying pains with previous RDLs, but with this change I don't. Plus, training spinal extension is freaking cool, and it's gonna build up your resiliency in your spine.
Yeah, it's always good.
Yeah. So that's kind of did that answer your question?
Yeah. One of the things that I had noticed, I turned on a ESPN and found that there was I think it was a CrossFit championship of some kind. So they're doing the big snatch and clings. They're doing the I forget what the exercise is called, but they're basically they're hanging from a bar and pulling their legs all the way up to the bar.
Toes to bar?
Yeah, they're doing that, and then jump rope. So they're doing the whole thing. But when I've noticed them do their squat to snatch form, I was like, I noticed at least 6 of the people on that group, those legs were shaking like this, and I was like, I know it's heavy stuff, but I was kind of wondering, I was like, I know maybe an unstable knee is not the best for that kind of workout, but is there something about that form that makes it something that they just can't help it?
So it might not necessarily be that they can't help it. It might be that in the lens of competition at the highest level, to get there, you've already made probably a health trade-off to some degree. No one goes to the NFL thinking I'm planning to live to 90. Straight up. So when you're at that elite level, you've already kind of bought into the trade-off to some degree. So that risk of trying the 300-pound barbell. That's the next step up because they go in like increments. Understanding that there's a 5% increased risk of injury risk there, but a 10% chance that you're winning if you hit that. Like, a lot of athletes make that trade-off at that level, so it's hard to interpret form at that level because I think a lot of athletes are willing to make that trade-off to try for that last little bit. And at some point when you're pushing the bounds, like, something's going to break down somewhere.
It's just something I never would have thought of these professional bodybuilder competitions or like CrossFit or whatever. I would have thought like, that's the person I would have want to try to emulate when I'm doing this form.
Yeah. Well, watch their training and you do.
Mm-hmm.
The competition is completely different.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you watch Caitlin Clark, her training, it'll be like a sprint to the 3-point line, catch, shoot, like in that drill, different positions, like, so it's varied practice. It's specific practice. It's training the right metabolic system. She's doing box jumps, like all the right stuff. And then you look at her in a competition, and she gets hit in the shoulder, and she's like fading like this from the logo because that's what the play required, right? Like, not a high percentage shot, but she is taking essentially that risk because that's how she's analyzed the situation, and potentially it's the best likelihood of her succeeding there. So competition form and training form are probably a lot different in that regard.
Yeah, just something you never would have thought of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see. Let's shift gears a little bit. Talking about stretching was another really good one I wanted to look at. I know there's not this is the best warm-up out there. One of the things I had learned from the previous strength and conditioning professor that we had, he had us do, I think I took a strength training class, and he had us do this, basically the same warm-up every single time for the workouts that he had set up for us. And like, while it was like a full body warm-up, it was still, it still had its flaws. There were some like, go jog for 3 laps, then come down, do XYZ core exercises, then do a little bit of a different kind of a warm-up. One of them was the world's greatest stretch, like doing that a couple times. And then I think there was like a Spider-Man, mountain climbers. It was doing stuff like that, but trying to think from a warm-up standpoint, if you're maybe just having a leg-focused day versus a upper body day, like, is it worth warming up the arms to the same degree as the legs, or is it like maybe you just have a warm-up that's focused completely on warming up your legs and getting them moving?
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Start the stopwatch. We'll see how many people we can offend. The bulk of the evidence on stretching shows that there is little to no benefit in injury reduction. So the stretching to reduce injury is basically completely myth, if maybe like this much truth to it in minor nuanced cases. If you don't have a range of motion deficit, you can do no static stretching at all. Like, if you can do the movements and the basic human movements and get through your sport or life or exercise, stretching is wasting your time.
Interesting.
Fight me. And then, so step 2. Now, dynamic warm-ups are pretty cool. The NSCA and the current best bet on the literature is something along the lines of the RAMP protocol. So get your heart rate and core body temperature up a little bit. Doesn't have to be long, like 3 minutes. Like, that's totally fine. That's another thing. We'll pause. If your warm-up takes longer than 10 minutes and you're not competing at like the highest level, you're probably wasting your time. 15 minutes, you're for sure wasting your time. 20 minutes,
that's not a warm-up, that's a workout.
Just watch TikTok, something like that. Or if it's light enough to be considered a warm-up but taking 20 minutes, just watch TikTok. If it's hard enough that it could be considered a workout, just you're working out, like, right?
Yeah.
So then elevate your body temperature and then activate and potentiate the target muscle. So the best way to do this is to actually do the movement that you're going to do, but with less intensity. So let's say you're going to squat 315 for the day. Your first set, you might get 8 reps of 135, and then you bump to 225. So and then you gradually make smaller and smaller bumps, and then maybe 275. And then your last warm-up set will actually be your working weight for a single or a double. This actually potentiates your performance a little bit. They think it's probably either through upregulating motor cortex signaling or downregulating Golgi tendon organs to let your body essentially lift the loads it could. So that's what a warm-up should look like. It should be very specific and gradually increasing intensity after getting core body temperature up. And then any other things that you want to do that you find helps you feel good, because placebo is real. So like if I have some degree of tightness in my wrists that it annoys me on a back squat, sure, I'll static stretch my wrists knowing that it's strictly a comfort thing, and that will probably end up helping me. But I'm probably not going to hurt my wrist squatting, but it makes it a little more comfortable. I can focus in a little bit more on squats. So like things like that's also fine. But ramp protocol and dynamic stuff for warming up. Static stretching is mostly garbage if you have normal range of motion. If you have to do it probably after your workout. And your warm-up should be specific to what you're trying to do.
Okay, so a little bit more of a flexibility-based, like if you want to do a flexibility-based workout, then the static stretching can help you at least.
Yeah, so if you have a flexibility deficit, resistance training with full ranges of motion or gradually increasing your range of motion will do wonders, and then static stretching most days of the week, especially after your training, is going to be something really beneficial there. Stretching for mobility needs a large degree of frequency, so most days.
So when you get your gymnasts out here able to fully bend their body in half, that's something that they've done every single day of their life. So, gotcha.
You can get a big bench from benching twice a week, but you're not going to be able to do the splits from stretching twice a week.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, there was another thing that you had mentioned with that. It's gone now.
That's okay.
Yeah. It may come back, it may not.
Are also these questions like some of these things you know a little bit more about, but some of these questions you generally are curious about too? Like, am I also helping you here?
Yes, you're definitely helping
Sweet.
me here. All these questions are the questions that I know probably just a little bit about. Like I know just enough to be like, hey, this is what I've been taught at this level, but where is the next step? Like where is actually, if I were to go into a gym setting with a client and be like, they're asking me this question, what am I answering?
Yep.
So like the stretching thing, like that was something that for my entire life, sports, working, like coming to work out and doing things like that, like I'd been told like, yeah, do a 5-minute warm up, just do some like dynamic warm up stuff, and then like you can just go in and do it. Ramp protocol you had mentioned before, but like actually like putting it into practice, it's not something I've done.
Cool.
And so like questions like that's what it was. The question about the ramp protocol is, you said like keeping a warm up like less than like 5 minutes or so. The energy deficit for actually like starting at a little bit lower level, moving up to those higher levels, is that going to impact your performance that much? Because like if you're starting at say 61 RM to move to like 70, to move to 80, get to the 80 where you're actually starting to get into like, this is my workout for the day, like is that not going to affect the higher stuff?
So it shouldn't. There's a few reasons for this. If you are fit enough that you demand a longer warm-up so you don't break yourself in half, you're also fit enough to handle that.
Okay.
If you have mom and pop, this is their second time ever lifting, like they're going to be bench pressing like the 10-pound body bar or something, right? Mm-hmm. So like you don't need 4 warm-up sets to get them to that. It's like wall push-ups, the 5-pound tier or the 5-pound body bar, then you're into that. Now, if you're trying to set a world record bench press at 815, that might require 6 or 7 warm-up sets to get to it. Yep. But you're also benching more weight than any human's ever benched before, so you've been doing it for decades. So your fitness increases so that the warm-up no longer taxes you in a way that would degrade your performance. And then the risk of doing such an extreme thing also demands more warm-up. So it demands more, but you're also more fit to handle it.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, because from the like understanding the mechanisms of the Golgi tendon organs, like being able to move, kind of like telling it like, hey, we can move further, we can lift more, is something that like I've sometimes will do when I'm doing like a back squat. I'll start with pretty much just the bar, because my weight's not huge. I'm not able to super bench press like 300 yet.
Keyword yet.
Yeah. But like starting out doing just that, like I can start to feel like I still feel something when I'm doing that, and so it always made me curious. I was like, well, if I'm doing this first set and then I add like just 50 pounds on, and then finding out like that's already like, oh, that's kind of like doing something now, and then putting on my usual starter weight is like, oh, this is like we're going.
Yeah.
I didn't know if like by that fourth set if I'm gonna be, because at this point now I've done 6 sets of squats.
They're so submaximal, it shouldn't, but also your reps should be decreasing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're close to your working weight, like that set before it, if you were planning to do a set of 10, it might be a triple or something. And then when you touch your working weight, you might do it for a single or double to like the last warm-up set.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just something you never think about.
Yeah, for sure. Proximity to failure is going to be the thing that is going to actually take it out of you. So as long as you're not doing that, because if you're doing a double but you could have got 10, like, it should be fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Optimal workout durations. Something that I've noticed a lot just from like, social media trends is people being like, yeah, you're going to go to the gym like 5 days a week. You're going to go for like 2 hours. And these are like the big fitness people. Like they spend all day in the gym. And then they come home and then they're eating their like big protein packed meal. And then they're, next thing you know, they're like 2 hours later, they're back at the gym again. And it's like, how much is too much when you're trying to be, I would say, like moving from like intermediate to advanced?
Okay. There's a lot in that question.
There is a lot in that question.
Yeah. How much is too much is doing more than what you can recover from, and I'll unpack that.
Yeah. So
we know that you probably aren't finding the limit at the local musculature level. We have literature now that shows that if you take out every single other aspect of training, a single muscle group, they did this on quads actually, you can do 52 sets to failure a week, which is absurd. Like that would kill a normal human if they were training other muscle groups. But what they did is they removed the other fatiguing factors and then only train quads, right? So local muscular level, you can recover most likely. How you know you're recovering is if you're sore for under 2 days and you can match or beat performance. So if you train on Monday and by Wednesday or Thursday you have no perceptible weakness, soreness, or any other odd feelings, that's probably an okay amount of volume. If you want to know what the optimal upper limit of that is, chase that rabbit. So eventually you're going to get to a point where you train quads on Monday and by Tuesday at noon, you feel like you could give Monday's level of effort. Increase your relative difficulty, either through load, rep, volume. Repeat the process. And you're going to gradually chase the rabbit instead of down the hole, up the ladder, right? So that's how you find the optimal amount and how you continue to push the most amount that you could do. There's a lot of nuance to how you can manipulate this. So increasing food, increasing sleep, increasing frequency. So like 2-a-day sessions, those are also other options, but that's how you chase the rabbit up the hill. And then eventually you're going to notice a few things. You're not able to match or beat your performance across the board. So like you're gonna have multiple muscle groups that are starting to underperform. That's a sign that you're systemically overreached and you need to take a deload and back off. So for each muscle group, you can kind of chase, because it will be different between muscle groups. You can chase the rabbit up the hill, right? Adding sets and difficulty.
Yep.
But eventually you're gonna have performance degradation kind of across the board. That's when we deload. So then you can choose to specialize this, and let's use quads for an example, back everything down. You can chase just quads up the hill and you can actually go farther before you have to deload. So the optimal amount of time that you can spend in the gym, if we're talking about maximizing it, is getting the most amount of pump disruption and soreness that you can up to that second to third day, and then kind of keeping it there. So as you get more and more fit, you'll need to add sets, load or volume or reps and you'll kind of keep it in that range. Anything less than that is likely not growing as optimally, but still pretty good. So you can kind of keep it in there a little bit. And then that's whatever time that's going to be for you. So like you could take an endurance athlete that's like 100 pounds, they might be able to recover from like 50 sets. But then you take like prime Phil Heath or something like a Olympia bodybuilder, 6 sets of chest and they're done for 4 days, right? A little bit of a difference. So it's going to be different for everybody too. So measuring your pump disruption soreness and keeping it within the windows that we want is going to show you how much you can train for, and then you can adjust things on the margin to keep it there.
So like for just like in the gym time management, being able to be like, okay, well, let's just say you have in a perfect world where you have all day in the gym, being able to like, you take your pre-workout with plenty of carbohydrates, plenty of just like a little bit of protein to get you started. And then like you get to the gym, and then just like during your gym, after your like warm up, maybe you've done a couple 2 sets. That's when you want to hit your like during workout protein shake, those like rich carbs, the rich carb stuff to like get you that boost to get you through the rest of it.
Sure.
And then like hitting at the very, like we'll say it's noon at this point, and you're ready to go home. So you can just like cut your work off there, but you're still feeling like you go for like 2 more hours. This is just like full exaggeratory scenario here, but being able to find that point of I've gotten my energy from the morning, I'm now going to the gym, I am pushing myself, like I am feeling it, get that like middle boost from the protein shake, and then getting to the very end and you're like, okay, well, I can still keep going, but you're like, okay, time's up. Like we've been here for 4 hours today. Just like trying to find that, like I've definitely pushed myself. I've definitely found that I can keep going. Do you keep going? I guess is like the one question I'm trying to get at.
Gotcha. No. So a good way to measure this is going to be like subjective pumps and disruption. So like when you get out of a leg press, like if you have to like hold on to the leg press, or you're going to fall down and your legs are stiff with that pump, subjectively, if you would rate that as like a 7 out of 10 or more, you're probably at a pretty good amount for that muscle group for the day. So like, yeah, so what I'll do is actually in week 1, I'll have people train until they get a self-perceived 7 out of 10 pump and disruption. So like my quad's not working right and I have a 7 out of 10 pump, and we just write down those amount of sets. And let's say it's 4 sets got you there. That's our baseline. And then every week we will add load to the bar, trying to match our reps. And what that's going to do is every week that's going to gradually push us closer and closer to muscular failure. And then eventually we'll hit muscular failure. So we now know our starting point and we kind of know our ending point, or like how we're going to get to the end point. And then from there, what you do is if a muscle group got little to no soreness, I'll add an aggressive amount of sets, maybe 2 or 3 per week. If it got a good amount of soreness, I might add 1 to 2. If it got sore for too long, so maybe in the 3rd and 4th day, I won't add any sets. We'll just repeat the week because you got more fit. So then you know your start point, you know your end point, and you know how to progress to get there, and that dictates how long you're going to be in the gym.
Cool.